Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Before we get started, please share the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast with a friend, with a colleague, with a peer. We always appreciate you guys spreading the show. Make sure you're subscribed and give us a good rating and review. It really, really helps us out. We do appreciate it. We have the return of Dr. Coffee. How's it going? My partner in coffee crime, my friend. How you doing?
Oh my goodness, I've missed you. I've missed the podcast. I've missed speaking with you, Jordan. I've missed everything. It's been a COVID coffee nightmare.
Oh my gosh, no kidding. And you're out there on the East Coast where it's getting pounded hard. I know you're in a full house, so it's like full house quarantine for you. But we do appreciate you making time out in the middle of all this craziness.
Yeah, so my kids live up in Brooklyn with my grandchildren, Brooklyn, New York, and we didn't feel that was a safe place. So about 9 weeks ago, I said, pack up your stuff. You're coming down here to Maryland. And she said, why, Daddy? And I said, because I have a crystal ball. And I know what's going to happen. And let me tell you, living with two kids under the age of 5, my Zachy, he makes coffee nervous. That's how much energy he has. My God. But I haven't been able to do the podcast, but I've been trying to keep up on things in the coffee world. And I'm really glad to be back, but I have to give you some heat here.
Oh boy, I think I know what's coming. What's up?
So you missed me so much that you had to go and do a segment on Dalgona.
Oh no, I knew it was coming.
Oh my gosh. Did I miss the segment on enemas also?
I could feel the pressure, the mental pressure in the back of my head when I was saying equal parts instant coffee and you're just medicinal brew. Your voice was in my head. And sugar, carcinogen, medicinal beverage. Your voice was in my head the whole time. You were there in spirit, even if it wasn't an approving spirit.
So my daughter's a real chef, baker, cook, pastry maker. She's really into all that stuff. And she came down here and she mentioned to me Dalgona. And I said, you might as well just stick a needle in my eye right now. I'm done with this. And she goes, but Daddy, you love coffee. And I go, yes. She goes, well, how about if I make you coffee ice cream?
Right.
And I said, great. How do you make coffee ice cream? And she said, well, you get milk and cream and sugar and instant coffee. And I decided that was it. I just thought about slitting my wrist and calling it a day. Or going out and getting COVID-19 from somebody. But I taught her how to make both cold brew and coffee ice cream using milk cold brew.
Oh my gosh, before we get started, can you quickly give us that coffee ice cream recipe?
I absolutely can. And boy, it's delicious. And I do it really differently than a lot of people because I don't use an ice cream machine. So I don't churn. And what you do is you steep, whichever way you want to call it,
right,
the coffee in milk overnight so that it becomes a cold brew. You grind your purity coffee the dark roast.
Oh, nice.
Unless you are real sensitive to caffeine, and then you have to go get a good decaf coffee. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give a shout out to my friends at Dark Matter, and I'll talk to you about why I'm giving a shout out to them. But they have a decaf coffee you can use, and their proceeds go to suicide prevention, which we'll talk about in a little while.
Oh, that's exactly right.
So what you do is get a nice decaf if you don't want the caffeine, and you grind it coarsely, and you put it in whole milk, and you let a cup of whole milk, you let it sit. So about 2/3 cup of coarsely ground coffee. 1 cup whole milk, you let it sit overnight.
Wow.
And then the next morning, you're going to mix it together with, I use a little cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, because I don't want the egg yolks.
Right.
But you can use egg yolks, you can use a little cornstarch, and you make a slurry. And then you add the milk mixture with some heavy cream and some sugar and a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And if anybody wants
Oh
the
my
full
God.
recipe, I could give it to you. And you stir it up really, really, really good, and then stick it in your freezer.
Oof.
I use a 9 by 12 or something Pyrex dish for it. Stick it in the freezer. And then when it is crunchy freezy, not frozen solid, but crunchy freezy, you use a mix master and you just blend and blend and blend. You can't blend it enough. And then throw it into a container, freezer safe container with a silicone lid. Put it in the freezer, let it freeze overnight, and the next day you have coffee ice cream.
Bing, bang, boom. Oh my God. That sounds incredible. I cannot wait to give that a try myself. Yeah, really, really interesting. Definitely beats the instant coffee mixed with the pure sugar, I'd say. So got to try that. Well, let's get a PDF together. I want that recipe written down, and we'll put together a little graphic and maybe put it up so the listeners can go to a URL and download it. Man, I love that ice cream recipe, Dr. Coffee.
Yeah, if they ever need, they also know if they never ever need anything as far as recipes with coffee, it's doc@level1diagnostics.com. They can always email me, or they can email you, or we can put it up on your website.
Yeah, I want to put together, and this is another one that I'm going to do here, Dr. Coffee, real quick. Notice I turned it away from the Dalgona really quick because of my shame, but this one you'll be proud of. One recipe we're going to be posting for the listeners is a health-conscious steak rub using coffee. I can no longer cook a steak at home without putting coffee on it. It is incredible how it enhances the flavor. It does not take over at all. It enhances that flavor. I'm sure you're putting coffee on your steaks, right?
Well, I'm a vegetarian, so
Oh, of course you are. No, I was just going to say.
You know that, so I put it on my carrots when I grill them.
There you go. There you go, man. No, but seriously, something about the grill and the coffee is it doesn't take over. It's absolutely perfect.
When I make a steak for my son on the grill, I do a coffee rub for him. I use
game changer.
I use Kona for some reason.
Oh, interesting. I like
Kona
that.
and a little salt.
I will definitely be trying different blends, different cultivars, and that sort of thing. Listen, we're here for coffee news today. Loving coffee news. We're back in action. The duo that is Jordan River and Dr. Coffee. Let's jump right in, shall we?
Sure.
The first article that's I have in front of me here from QSRmagazine.com. It's entitled, What the Future Holds for the Coffee Industry Post-COVID-19. And that's exactly the take that I want from you, Dr. Coffee. I want to know what's going to happen after this whole pandemic and what the new normal is going to look like. This article, you can dig in, give it a Google if you want to read the whole thing here, but it basically focuses on contact-free selling. You know, many cafes have shifted to carry out only, curbside pickup, a highlight on site roasting, engaging in e-commerce, and of course, the rigorous cleanliness and sanitizing that now goes on in so many different industries, but now with coffee. Talk to me about what the future looks like, your concerns, maybe some positive prognostications if you have any.
Sure. So, COVID, and I don't want to get into any of the politics of COVID, but as a doctor, I unfortunately get to see how horrible this disease is. And we've shut down our world right now because of it. And part of that world is how we drink coffee. And you and I have talked about this before. There is coffee that you make for yourself, and there's coffee that you get at a coffee house. And the coffee house has a very important place in our culture.
Yes.
So it's where we meet. It's where I go in the morning after I've done my first pot of coffee to sit and read the paper and to say hi to everybody. People always say that Dr. Coffee is holding court in the morning at the coffee house. So I head up to Mad City Coffee in Columbia, Maryland, and I'll hold court and people will drop by and ask me questions. And so the coffee house has an atmosphere about it that's very important. That atmosphere is gone right now. It will come back eventually, but it's gone right now. So we need to do two things. One, we need to protect our coffee houses the same way that we're protecting our favorite restaurants.
Right.
There are restaurants we love to go to that are not able to be restaurants right now, but that they can do carry out. and takeout and safe curbside drop off and all the things that they've done. And we need to support those restaurants. We also need to be supporting our coffee houses. I am very disappointed from my limited survey of coffee houses and what they've done to stay alive in COVID. I think it could have been handled much better. I think they should have hired consultants to help them figure out how to continue doing what they're doing. Most coffee houses, privately owned, have lists of people that come in or know people that come in. It's the same clientele. They could have made arrangements to do dropping off coffee at people's houses. You know, the radius of where we live to our favorite coffee house, unless it's work, is close by. So they could have done things to ensure that they're staying alive. The only one I've really seen do that is Starbucks, and the takeout line of cars at Starbucks is blocks.
Yeah, I've seen it. You're absolutely right. Yeah, if only there were some best practices put in place early, and you're right, more of a social push. I think that it was already such a social thing. It just dropped off so quickly. You're right. The small businesses didn't know what to do.
Yeah, they didn't. And I think if we have friends that own coffee houses, we should be working with them to try and keep them alive. I have friends of mine that will buy gift cards for our local coffee house. I'm constantly pushing buy a gift card so that they can stay in business when things change. Mm-hmm. We also need to protect ourselves coffee-wise. So it's time you learned how to make a shot of espresso. It's time people learned how to make a cold brew. It's time people learned how to make a French press.
Like people are cooking at home. I like that.
Yeah, it's time we learned how to make our own coffee and not rely on just going to the coffee shops.
That's exactly right. And what worries me the most is kind of what you alluded to earlier, which is this tradition of the coffee house being lost or forever changed from all of this. That's what I fear the most. And like you said, I'm not into the politics of reopening versus not reopening, but that is a concern I have, especially diving so deep into the history and seeing that it goes back, hundreds and hundreds of years into virtually all of the greatest societies that this beverage has touched. So really, I would hate to see that marred. That really is my number one concern. Let me ask you this though. One of the paragraphs in this article talks about the on-site roasting, and it may be beneficial for coffee houses at this time to cut out any part of the supply chain that they can to avoid potential disruptions and also to avoid another, kind of risk of contamination if you think about it. And I also know that some cultures, for instance, in Japan, they already do on-site roasting kind of not a gimmick, but just kind of as a method over there, as a best practice. You pick out your green beans, they'll roast it right there for you. What do you think about on-site roasting? And what do you think about, a roasting curve can just be on like a USB stick or on the cloud somewhere. Wouldn't it be cool if you could walk in, pick out your beans and say, I want a purity roasting profile on this and go? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so our local coffee shops that I go to all do on-site roasting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've always supported roasters. We have a number in the Baltimore region that are great. We had one of our medical offices next to Zeke's, and they make great coffee. And we had a friendship where we traded them services for coffee.
Bartering, love it.
But I really like the fact that right now you should be able to call your local coffee roaster and be able to say, I want to pick up a pound of whatever. And if you don't have a grinder, ask them to grind it for you.
Right.
Or buy a grinder. Amazon's still open for business, I think.
Man, I've missed you, Dr. Coffee. We're back in action, man. I'm feeling it. I'm fired up over here. Does that cover the first article here? I feel like that about covers it. We should move on to the second one, which I'm dying to get to.
Yep.
So I'm looking at an article at ABC7 Chicago. So shout out to the local Chicago family here. I'm out in Illinois in Chicagoland. This article is titled, Mental Health-Focused Coffee Shop Reopens to Help Chicagoans in Need During COVID-19 Crisis. So it looks like a local coffee shop out in Logan Square. Sip of Hope is what it's called. They had to close due to COVID-19, but they are opening up, and it's just a few hours a day, a couple days a week. So why is this special? A coffee shop is reopening. Big deal. Well, this particular Chicago coffee shop gives 100% of its proceeds to support suicide prevention and mental health education. And I thought this was interesting. The reason I brought it to you, Dr. Coffee, was not just to highlight, this cool operation that they have going on there. We're not affiliated with them or anything, but really interesting that I wonder how much these people know. I'm sure they've heard about that link between coffee consumption and suicide prevention. We talk about the disease prevention, but that study, particularly with the nurses, it's always fascinated me, Dr. Steve. I can wrap my head around, it helping your liver and helping your heart, but the suicide prevention thing has always been so fascinating to me. So what do you think about, like you said, the dark matter teaming up with Sip of Hope here and the Chicago coffee shop reopening?
Yeah, so first let me give a congratulations to Dark Matter. They are a coffee roasting company. They have subscriptions, the whole bit, just like Purity and some of the other coffee roasters that are out there. They have taken part of their proceeds and funded a coffee shop whose whole proceeds go to mental health.
Oh, so that's how that works. And that's Sip of Hope.
Yeah, so Sip of Hope is a coffee shop that's run as a partnership between Dark Matter and I forget who the other group is.
Right, but the mental health advocates.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll get back to you on who the other group is, but there's a partnership between two. Dark Matter is a coffee company. They use their proceeds to open up Sip of Hope, which gives 100% of its proceeds to mental health care. Now, we know three things. We know three things. We know, one, that during this stressful time of COVID, suicide rates are elevated. Depression is elevated. I don't have the figures in front of me because there are too many figures swirling through my head with all this COVID stuff that I haven't tried to isolate how many more suicides or mental breakdowns there have been. But I can tell you that there's talk in the medical industry about the effects of this sheltering in place and stress on no money and worried about getting sick and blah, 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 increasing suicides. So I think that they're doing a phenomenal job. So that's one thing we know. The second thing we know is that coffee helps ease depression. We're going to talk about one reason that it may be when we get later to talk about the Framingham study. So I'm going to hold that for us.
Okay.
The third thing we know is that when people feel depressed, caffeine may help them.
Right.
So those are the three things associated with mental health care and coffee caffeine that I know of.
Right. Just looking here really quick, Dr. Steve, Hope for the Day and Dark Matter Coffee teamed up for Sip of Hope, it appears. And Hope for the Day, looking like according to their website, suicide is now surged to a 30-year high. Yeah, it's really a growing problem under the current conditions. So again, I would love to dig into what this link is between coffee and suicide prevention. I know that it has the depression effect. Is that largely due to the reduction in inflammation? Do you think it has something more to do with the ritualistic aspect of coffee being a bit of a respite, a bit of a healthy escape?
No, while there may be a component of that, I think the real data is in what the antioxidants do to reducing inflammation of the brain, but also what the antioxidants do to cardiovascular effects. And remember, your heart, the whole purpose is it's an oxygen delivery system. It delivers oxygen from the tip of your toes to the top of your nose. And part of that oxygenation is the branch that comes off the heart that goes up to the brain.
Hmm.
And people that have, the term is ischemia. less oxygen than they need, or hypoxia, less oxygen than they need. The people that have less oxygen than they need up to their brain have a higher incidence of anxiety and depression.
Wow, that makes sense.
So when we dilate the arteries and make the heart work better and make the red blood cells carry oxygen better, and there's more oxygen up in the brain, then we know that there's a decrease in anxiousness and panic attack and depression. We also know that there is a genetic link, and that's why I said when we talk about Framingham's study, we can talk about the genetic link of coffee, people that are attracted to coffee and what it does for them.
Awesome. And we're getting to that in the fourth article here. But definitely for you Chicagoland folks out there listening, definitely check out Dark Matter Coffee. Definitely check out Sip of Hope. And of course, Hope for the Day. Does that about cover this article here, Dr. Coffee?
It does.
Let us move on then, shall we, to the next article here. I thought this was a cool one. I am doing some home gardening, Dr. Coffee. I've got my lettuce going. I've got my celery going in the basement under some T5s. I'm doing not just, pesticide-free home gardening. I'm going full-blown regenerative organic with a super soil, and I'm tending to the microbial life. I'm really, really excited. And guess what comes up when I'm researching home regenerative farming? Coffee grounds are apparently incredibly useful in your garden and beyond. So I'm going to run down this list of 11 ways to reuse your coffee grounds according to The Guardian, and then I'll get your take after I list these off. Does that sound good, Dr. Coffee?
That sounds great.
So this is one that I hadn't heard of. The first use for leftover coffee grounds is it actually has pest repellent properties, specifically when it comes to ants, slugs, and snails, according to this article. All you do is sprinkle your grounds around your plants, create a perimeter, and bam, there you go. I've seen things like diatomaceous earth used for that, but coffee grounds, I had no idea, used coffee grounds. Now, this one is what brought me to the page. Coffee grounds can be used to invite worms. Earthworms are very beneficial to soil. So if you go ahead and get your grounds into your soil, you'll attract worms, and it really helps them and makes them healthier. So composting is another great use for used coffee grounds. People who do the composting, compost piles, you can do little compost piles in your backyard. Coffee grounds are high in nitrogen, so they make excellent additions to your compost pile. You can use them as just straight fertilizer because of that nitrogen. You just mix old grounds with dead grass clippings, brown leaves, or dry straw, and spread the mixture around acid-loving plants, and they will take up that nitrogen. You can use used coffee grounds to jumpstart a harvest and increase yields of plants like carrots and radishes. And all you got to do is mix the dried coffee grounds in with the carrot and radish seeds before you plant them. And this is a cool one because I've had some really, really great coffee soap in the past. This website has a recipe with using coffee granules as an abrasive, mix it with glycerin soap, and bam, you've got yourself a nice abrasive exfoliating gardener's soap. Really, really cool. You can deodorize your fridge with used coffee grounds. You just stick it in your fridge uncovered at the back of the fridge, and it'll absorb all those nasty odors. You can use it to deodorize your hands, clean your tools and cookware. Just sprinkle your coffee grounds onto a scrub brush and use them as an abrasive on pots and pans. That's an interesting one. And finally, remove product buildup on hair. Before shampooing, you can massage a handful of coffee grounds into your hair to remove residue of shampoo, conditioner, and other hair care products. Don't get me started on the overuse of hygiene products, specifically when it comes to your hair. Dr. Steve, does any of that surprise you? I mean, I'm sure you're already washing your hair with coffee, so did any of these surprise you? What do you think of this list?
No, not at all. So let me tell you what I hate, and let me tell you what I love. Okay. So not to disparage the Keurig, but I hate the fact that all these people drink coffee from a Keurig and then take all those really great grounds and the non-recyclable container and fill up our landfills with it.
Yeah, that's rough.
I mean, I don't want to debate anybody on climate change, though I could, but do want people to know that we're still doing the wrong things, whether there's climate change or not. There is. Whether there's climate change or not, we're still doing the wrong things.
Man, that's like gold that we're encapsulating in garbage plastic. That's going to basically, that's a really bad idea. We're wasting a lot of assets there.
Well, so here's the secret. Somebody one day is going to listen to your podcast, Jordan, and they're going to say, "Oh, I heard Dr. Coffee talking about this, and I got this idea." And they're going to start a company in which everybody who uses coffee, whether it's in a Keurig or in a Nespresso, or whether it's just filtered coffee, they're all going to send their coffee back to this company. And this company is going to take all that coffee and they're going to sanitize it, and then they're going to use it for a million things. And somebody's going to hear my podcast one day and they're going to go, "Hey, I should write a book on all the things we could do for using coffee."
Oh, it's a great idea. That is $1 million idea right there.
There is a way to take coffee grounds and using a certain bamboo type product, turn it into almost like a plaster board.
Whoa.
So instead, what we're doing is all these people who drink coffee are just throwing it into our landfills. It's horrible.
You want to live in a coffee house, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Literally,
want to live in a coffee house.
A coffee house. No, you're absolutely right. It's an
People who live in a coffee house shouldn't throw cream and sugar.
Yes. Well done. Well done, Dr. Coffee. Unscripted right there. I'm saving all my grounds now. I am integrating it into my garden. We'll see what other uses I can find for it, man. Absolutely thrilled. Again, theguardian.com article is titled "Grinding Away 11 Ways to Reuse Leftover Coffee Grounds." We've got one more article to get here. We have to dig into this one. I'm so excited about this article from the Greek City Times. Interesting. Study finds genes and environment influence coffee drinking. Oh my gosh. What can you tell me about this article, Steve? Why don't I get your view before I even dig into this?
So there's a couple of things that they linked in this article of which I have a major interest in. The first thing that they talked about in this article are what's called blue zones.
Right.
And there are a handful of blue zones around the world, 6 of them, I believe. There's one town in Greece, I think it's called Ikaria, which is considered one of the blue zones. And what a blue zone is Dan Butner went around the country, the world, looking for places where people lived well past 90. And they called that a blue zone. And one of the things that this article was talking about is the type of coffee that they're drinking in Greece and whether or not it's leading to an increase in age and an increase in the residents of the blue zone. And so they're calling it Greek coffee the same way they call Greek yogurt something. And it's grown in Greece coffee. Now, we know that Greece has mountains and micro valleys with micro temperatures the same way the wine country in California has microclimates.
Mm-hmm.
So rocky soil. We know that the coffee that would be grown there is high in antioxidants. There isn't as much pollution there. So the coffee is not being grown with pesticides and it's not soaking in a lot of pollution. The second thing that the article hinted at, though, is something interesting. So, level 1 diagnostics, we do cardiology.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been my interest, is why are so many people dying from heart disease? And we know that people that drink coffee have a lower incidence of heart disease. But we also know that there is a genetic predisposition, which was found in the Framingham study. So the Framingham study is the big study that's been going on since 1940 something. And it's looking at different effects of things on cardiovascular disease. And they found that people that have a genetic predisposition to liking coffee and consuming more coffee have a lower incidence of heart disease.
Wow. So the question begs kind of nature versus nurture, chicken and egg type scenario there, right?
It definitely does. And if you go and have a gene test like a 23andMe, when they go through your profiles, one of the things that they'll talk about is whether you have the genetics that force you to want to drink more coffee and
No
like
way.
coffee better. Yeah.
So anyone can find out if they have this gene
Yeah.
for a couple $100 or whatever it is. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, this Framingham study, very interesting. You're right, 1948. And again, investigating how lifestyle and genetics affect rates of cardiovascular disease. And of course, coffee is going to play into this. And this is why I love the Coffee Health and Science podcast, Steve, because it's really linking together. It's almost pulling together some mysteries of our world, because we already kind of know this about plants. We know that plants react to how they're grown, and that even has an effect on their epigenetics down the line. Like if you're dealing with plants that have a lineage in an organic, microbe-rich, fungus-rich super soil, and you throw them into a synthetic setup, they're going to be shocked. They're going to have all these, predispositions that are going to come out, all sorts of problems. So much of this, the rhizosphere compared to the microbiome. I mean, this is really fascinating stuff. And I feel like it's kind of unlocking some like keys to our universe, sort of. I don't want to sound too crazy here, but you know what I mean?
Well, I definitely know what you mean. And there's something that's really not appropriate for this podcast, but we also know that there's a mineral, lithium. And lithium, I think, is going to become my mineral of the year for 2021.
Why is that?
We know that soils that have more lithium in it, which means that a certain type of coffee is grown with higher amounts of lithium.
Yeah.
We know that people that drink that or take in higher amounts of lithium, safe numbers, but higher amounts, have much longer longevity.
Wow.
Less disease and much less mental health disease. Now, lithium in high doses we use for treatment of bipolar disorder. I'm not talking about the
prescribed pharmaceutical. Yeah, no, exactly.
So I'm talking about the lower doses of lithium.
And in a natural delivery system too, and synergized with all of those other things. That is fascinating, Dr. Coffee. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you for bringing that up. I find this stuff to be infinitely fascinating. And that's why I'm so grateful for this show and for the listeners and of course for you, Dr. Coffee.
So thank you very much for saying that. So one of the things people can do is when they drink their coffee in the morning, have their list of healthy supplements with it. And one day soon, you and I should do another podcast on what healthy supplements to have with your coffee.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially now people are looking to boost their immune system. I would love to dig into that with you anytime, my friend.
Okay.
Listen, does that wrap it up? I feel like this flew by. I feel like we're back in action. The boys are back in town. I'm all about this, Dr. Steve. I'm absolutely ecstatic. I can't thank you enough, as I said.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me leave the group with this parting word, please. And if it doesn't sound right, you can always cut it, I guess.
No, please. Absolutely.
So during this time where I've been stuck in the house, I've been trying to figure out everything I can to do to make my house more of a coffee house. And so I recently built a picture frame, a window box. And in it, I have it 3/4 of the way filled up with beans, coffee beans, dark roasted coffee beans. And I have this label on it, and it says, "In case of emergency, break glass."
Love it. That's absolutely incredible. Can we get that up on our Instagram ASAP?
Okay, I'll take a picture of it.
That's awesome. Absolutely love it, Dr. Coffee. Well, we hope we don't find you having to break that in a rage in the middle of the night or day. So listen, man, stay sane out there, stay healthy. Thank you for all you do, my friend. I look forward to speaking to you again in the near future.
You too.
Everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in. As I said, make sure you're subscribed. Give us a good rating and review. We do appreciate that. We'll be back with more coffee news, more coffee, health, science, education, history. Loving what's going on with the Coffee Health and Science podcast. Again, thanks to you listeners. Be safe, be healthy out there, all of you podcast listeners. This is Dr. Coffee and Jordan River signing off, saying have an extraordinary day. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science Podcast.